Everyone says the CEO is infertile and sickly, but after one night he gets her pregnant. Hi, my very, very beautiful and loyal family. Welcome home. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. Before anything else, let me wrap you in a warm prayer from the depths of my soul. May your days be kissed with peace, your nights held in comfort, and your heart overflow with love. May every tear you've shed water the garden of your dreams. And may the light you've given to others return to you 1,000 times more. You are loved, you are seen, and you are never alone. Amen. My sweet, sweet family, I want to ask you, are my stories still touching your hearts? Am I telling the kind of love you long for? Your comments, your love, your words, they mean more to me than you'll ever know. Please don't forget to share how you feel. Your voice is my heartbeat. YouTube may try to push us down, but they can never break a family like ours. So if you feel the love in this video, please like, comment, and share it with someone who needs a little light today. And now, something so precious. God has blessed me with a beautiful granddaughter. When I held her in my arms, I felt heaven. She's soft, she's perfect, she's love in human form. But now I need your help. What should I name her? Give me the most beautiful name you can think of, something that carries the love we all share. And now, my beautiful family, let's begin this story. And as always, let's start with love. Thorne Westbrook stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, staring out at the Manhattan skyline as evening shadows stretched across the city. The ruby glow of sunset caught on steel and glass, but for Thorne there was no magic left in his world, only the cold reality of rumors that had taken on a life of their own. At 36, he had built Westbrook Innovations into a tech empire valued at billions. Yet in the circles where deals were made over whiskey and handshakes, he had become something else entirely, a curiosity, a subject of cruel whispers. Poor Westbrook, all that money and no heir to leave it to. Have you noticed how sickly he looks? Probably why his wife left. I heard he can't, perform, explains why Alessandra walked out. The whispers had begun after his divorce 3 years ago. Alessandra, the woman he had loved since college, had stood before the press with mascara-stained cheeks and declared that she couldn't bear the emptiness of a childless marriage to a man incapable of giving her a family. The words had cut deeper than any business defeat ever could. The truth was far more complex. Their fertility struggles had been mutual, but Alessandra had found it easier to blame him publicly than accept her role in their childlessness. And his pallor, the sickly appearance that fueled speculation, was simply the result of grueling 18-hour workdays and chronic insomnia. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Westbrook, the board members are waiting in the conference room." His assistant's voice was gentle, almost pitying. He straightened his shoulders and adjusted his tailored suit jacket. "Thank you, Lydia. Tell them I'll be right there." As he gathered his tablet and notes, his phone buzzed with a text from his closest friend, Marcus. "Don't forget, Zenith Gallery opening tonight. No excuses this time. You need a life outside that office." Thorne sighed. He had promised Marcus he would attend, though the thought of navigating another social event filled with the same people who gossiped about his supposed inadequacies made his stomach tighten. The board meeting dragged on for 2 hours. By the time he arrived at the Zenith Gallery in Chelsea, the opening was in full swing. The converted warehouse space buzzed with New York's elite, investors, celebrities, artists, and influencers documenting their every move. Thorne moved through, the crowd with practiced ease, nodding at familiar faces, shaking hands when necessary. "There he is!" Marcus appeared at his side, champagne flute in hand. "I was beginning to think you'd stood me up." "Board meeting ran long," Thorne explained, accepting the glass Marcus pressed into his hand. Of course it did. Heaven forbid Thorne Westbrook take an evening off. Marcus grinned, but concern shadowed his eyes. How are you really? And don't give me the press release version. Thorne took a sip of champagne before answering. I'm fine. Bullshit. I saw the article in Business Insider yesterday. Westbrook's empty legacy. That headline was brutal. Thorne's jaw tightened. Just another day of character assassination. I'm used to it. You shouldn't have to be, Marcus replied, his voice hardening. What Alessandra did is in the past, Thorne cut him off. I've moved on. Before Thorne could say more, his attention was caught by a painting on the far wall, an explosive canvas of deep blues and vibrant golds that seemed to capture both storm and sunshine in the same moment. As he moved closer to examine it, he realized someone was already standing before the painting. She stood perfectly still, her head tilted slightly as she studied the canvas, with an intensity that suggested she was seeing far more than pigment and texture. She was striking, tall and elegant in a simple gold dress that complemented her rich dark skin. Her hair was styled in an intricate updo, adorned with delicate gold pins that caught the gallery lights. What intrigued him most, however, was her complete absorption in the artwork. It's like looking at hope and despair having a conversation, isn't it? The words left his mouth before he could reconsider the impulse to speak to her. She turned, surprised by the interruption, and Thorne found himself looking into the most expressive brown eyes he'd ever seen. Deep and thoughtful, with flecks of amber catching the light. I was thinking it's more like watching someone fight their way back to themselves, she replied, her voice melodic with a slight accent he couldn't place. See how the gold is breaking through the darkness? It's about redemption. Her interpretation struck him with unexpected force. Redemption, he repeated softly. I hadn't considered that. She smiled then, and something shifted in the air between them. I'm Zephina Avery, she said, extending her hand. Thorne Westbrook. He took her hand, expecting the flicker of recognition that usually crossed people's faces when they heard his name. But Zephina simply nodded. Nice to meet you, Thorne. Are you an art collector or just here for the champagne? The casual question, free of agenda, caught him off guard and drew a genuine laugh from him, the first in longer than he could remember. A bit of both, I suppose, he admitted, though I'm finding the art more compelling than expected. This is Naledi Storm's work, Zephina said, gesturing to the painting. She's a genius at capturing emotional dichotomies. This whole series explores the theme of emerging from darkness. You know her work well. I should, Zephina replied with a small smile. I curated this exhibition. Thorne raised an eyebrow, impressed. I didn't realize I was speaking with the curator. Would it have changed what you said? There was a hint of challenge in her question. Not at all, but I might have asked for a more comprehensive tour. Her smile widened, revealing a small dimple in her right cheek. That could be arranged. She glanced at her wristwatch, though I should warn you that when I talk about art, I tend to lose track of time. I can't think of a better way to spend an evening, Thorne responded, surprising himself with his sincerity. For the next hour, Zephina guided him through the exhibition, her passion for each piece evident in the way she spoke, not with rehearsed descriptions, but with genuine enthusiasm for the stories behind each canvas. Thorne found himself captivated, not just by the artwork, but by Zephina herself. Her insights, her laugh, the graceful movements of her hands as she emphasized a point. She was 26, he learned, and had earned her master's degree in art. History from Howard University before working at galleries in Washington, D.C., Paris, and now New York. She spoke 4 languages, had grown up in Botswana until age 12, and believed art was the most honest form of human expression. By the time they circled back to the blue and gold painting that had first drawn him in, Thorne realized he had completely forgotten about the other guests, the business troubles awaiting him tomorrow, and the whispers that usually followed him through rooms like this. You never did tell me if you're a collector, Zefina said as they stood before the painting once more. I own some pieces, Thorn admitted, but I've never had anyone help me see them quite the way you do. Perhaps you've been looking without seeing, she suggested, her eyes meeting his with unexpected directness. The simple observation felt profound, applicable to far more than his appreciation of art. For the first time in years, Thorn felt something stir within him, a flicker of possibility where there had been only resignation. I'd like to see more, he said quietly. Of the art, he added quickly, though they both knew he meant something more. Zefina studied him for a moment, as if assessing whether he was worth the risk. Then she reached into her clutch and pulled out a business card. My personal number is on the back, she said, in case you're serious about seeing things differently. As their fingers brushed during the exchange, Thorn felt a jolt of connection that had nothing to do with static electricity and everything to do with the way she looked at him, like she saw the man, not the reputation that preceded him. Long after he'd left the gallery, the weight of her card in his pocket felt like the only real thing in a world that had judged and dismissed him based on whispers and lies. For the first time in 3 years, Thorn Westbrook dared to hope that perhaps his story wasn't finished after all. Chapter 2. Beyond First Impressions. 3 days after the gallery opening, Thorn finally gathered the courage to call Zefina. He'd spent those days turning her business card over in his hands, wondering if the connection he'd felt had been real or simply a product of his loneliness. Zenith Gallery, Zefina Avery speaking. The professional tone caught him off guard. Zefina, it's Thorn Westbrook. A pause, then her voice softened. I was beginning to think you weren't interested in seeing things differently after all. I've been tied up with meetings, he lied, unwilling to admit his hesitation. But I can't stop thinking about that blue and gold piece. Is it still available? Naledi's Emergence. Yes, it is. I'd like to purchase it. The decision was impulsive but felt right. And perhaps you might join me for dinner to discuss the artist's other works. Another pause. Mr. Westbrook, Thorn, he corrected. Thorn, she conceded. I don't typically dine with clients. Consider it a professional consultation, then. He held his breath, suddenly feeling like a teenager asking for a first date rather than a billionaire CEO who commanded boardrooms. Professional, she repeated, a smile evident in her voice. In that case, I know a small cafe in the West Village, much better for discussing art than some stuffy restaurant where they'll interrupt us every 5 minutes to refill water glasses. Relief washed over him. Just text me the address, tomorrow at 7? Perfect, she replied. And Thorn, leave the suit at home. The next evening, Thorn found himself at Violet's, a tiny cafe tucked between a bookstore and a vintage record shop. The space was warm and intimate, with mismatched furniture and walls covered in local artwork. Not a single person glanced his way when he entered. A refreshing change from the usual whispers and stares. Zefina was already seated in a corner booth, her hair loose around her shoulders in a cascade of tight coils, wearing a simple blue dress that made her skin glow in the candlelight. When she spotted him, her smile was genuine, and something inside Thorn's chest loosened. You actually did it, she said, as he slid into the seat across from her. Did what? Left the suit at home. She gestured to his dark jeans and charcoal sweater. You look different. Is that a compliment or criticism? He asked, surprised by how much her opinion mattered. Just an observation. She sipped her tea. I wasn't sure if you owned anything besides bespoke suits. There's a lot you don't know about me, he said, then immediately regretted the defensive edge in his voice. But Zefina merely nodded. That's generally how first impressions work. Or second ones in our case. The waitress arrived to take their orders, and Zafina recommended the jollof rice with grilled fish. When the waitress left, an unexpected awkwardness settled between them. "So," Thorn began, reverting to familiar territory, "about Nalidi's other pieces." "Let's not," Zafina interrupted softly. "We both know this isn't really about art." Her directness caught him off guard. "Then what is it about?" "I think you have felt something at the gallery, something rare enough that you kept my card for 3 days before calling." She leaned forward slightly. "And I think you're used to people wanting things from you, so you're not sure what to do with someone who just wants to know who you are." Thorn stared at her, momentarily speechless. "Are you always this perceptive with strangers? My mother says it's both my gift and my curse." She tilted her head, studying him. "In Botswana, my grandmother was what villagers called a soul reader. Everyone was afraid she could see their secrets." A smile played at her lips. "Maybe I inherited a little of that. And what do you see when you look at me?" The question emerged before he could stop it. Vulnerable in a way Thorn rarely allowed himself to be. Zafina considered him for a long moment. "I see someone who's built walls so high, he's forgotten there's a view on the other side." Their food arrived, saving Thorn from having to respond. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before he found his voice again. "Tell me about Botswana," he said, genuinely curious about her past. For the next 2 hours, they talked, without pause. Zafina told him about growing up in Gaborone until her mother, a professor of linguistics, accepted a position at Howard University when Zafina was 12. She described the culture shock of moving to America, her determination to keep her heritage alive through art and storytelling, and her dream of opening her own gallery someday. In turn, Thorn shared pieces of himself he rarely revealed. His childhood in a modest Chicago suburb, losing both parents in a car accident at 23, channeling his grief into building his company. He carefully avoided mention of Alessandra or the rumors that had followed their divorce, and Zafina didn't press. "It's getting late," she finally said, glancing at her watch. "Some of us have to open galleries in the morning." Outside, the night air was cool and clear. They stood awkwardly on the sidewalk, neither ready to say goodbye. "I'll have the painting delivered to your office tomorrow," Zafina said. "I'd rather pick it up myself," Thorn replied. "If that's all right," she smiled. "I'd like that." A sleek black Bentley pulled up to the curb, Thorn's driver right on cue. "Can I give you a ride home?" Zafina shook her head. "I'm just a few blocks away. Besides, it's a nice night for walking and thinking." "About what?" "About whether I should let you kiss me good night." Her boldness made him laugh, a genuine sound that surprised even him. "And what conclusion have you reached?" "That sometimes the only way to know if something's real is to test it." She stepped closer and tilted, her face up to his. The kiss was gentle, questioning at first, then deeper as Thorn's hand found the small of her back. When they parted, Zafina's eyes remained closed for a heartbeat longer, and Thorn knew she had felt it too, that undeniable current between them. "Good night, Thorn Westbrook," she whispered, stepping back. "Thanks for the consultation." He watched her walk away, feeling lighter than he had in years, until his phone buzzed with a notification. It was a reminder for tomorrow's business dinner with potential investors from Singapore. Attached was the briefing his assistant had prepared, which included a note. "These gentlemen have expressed concerns about stability of leadership based on recent rumors. Proceed with caution." Just like that, the weight returned to his shoulders. In Zafina's presence, he'd almost forgotten who he was supposed to be in the world's eyes, the sickly, sterile CEO whose legacy would die with him. But for the first time, a small voice inside him wondered if perhaps those whispers didn't have to define him after all. Chapter 3. Walls of glass. Over the next few weeks, Thorn and Zafina developed a rhythm to their relationship that felt both exhilarating and oddly comfortable. They met at small cafes, hidden art galleries, and hole-in-the-wall restaurants where Thorn could shed his public persona. Never at high-profile restaurants. Never at events where business associates might see them. Never at his penthouse or her loft apartment. Zafina noticed the pattern, but didn't comment on it until one evening, as they walked through a quiet section of Central Park, the early summer air sweet with flowering trees. "You know," she said casually, "for someone who owns half of Manhattan, you seem remarkably determined to hide in its shadows." Thorn's steps faltered slightly. "Is that how it feels? Like I'm hiding you?" "I'm not sure if you're hiding me or hiding from something else when you're with me." Her hand remained in his, but he felt a new tension in her fingers. Does it have something to do with why you never talk about your ex-wife or invite me to any events where your colleagues might be?" The question hung between them, dangerously close to territories Thorn had carefully avoided. He steered them toward a secluded bench overlooking the pond. "My world, the business world, it's not always kind," he began carefully, "especially to things that matter to me." Zafina studied his face in the fading light. "And I matter to you?" "More than I expected," he admitted. "That's why I want to keep us separate from all that." She didn't look entirely convinced. "Separate worlds for separate parts of your life. Does that ever get exhausting?" "You have no idea," he murmured. She squeezed his hand. "Then maybe it's time to let those walls down, at least with me." That night, they went to Thorn's penthouse for the first time. As the elevator climbed 60 floors, Zafina leaned against the glass wall, watching the city shrink beneath them. "Ever feel like you're living in a glass tower?" she asked. "Everyone can see in, but nobody can reach you." The observation was so close to how he often felt that Thorn could only nod. When the doors opened directly into his apartment, Zafina gasped softly at the panoramic views of New York sprawled out before them, twinkling like fallen stars. "It's beautiful," she said, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows. "But so isolated." "That's the point," Thorn replied, pouring them both a glass of wine. "Up here I can breathe, away from the whispers." The question was gentle but direct. Thorn froze, glass halfway to his lips. "What do you know about that?" "Not much," she admitted. "Just that whenever we're out, you tense up if we encounter anyone who might recognize you. And you get this look in your eyes sometimes, like you're bracing for something unpleasant." Relief washed over him. She didn't know the specifics then. For a moment, he considered telling her everything. About Alessandra's public betrayal, the rumors that followed, how business associates now looked at him with pity or doubtful speculation about his health and virility. Instead, he set down his glass and crossed to where she stood. "Tonight, I don't want to talk about any of that. Tonight, I just want to be with you." He cupped her face in his hands, and Zafina melted into his touch. When they kissed, it felt like freedom, like everything beyond this room and this moment ceased to exist. Later, as moonlight streamed through the uncurtained windows, they lay tangled together on the soft rug in his living room. Thorn traced patterns on her bare shoulder, marveling at the contrast between her smooth, dark skin and his pale fingers. A half-empty bottle of wine and discarded clothing scattered around them told the story of their passionate evening. "What are you thinking?" Zafina asked, her chin propped on his chest, eyes studying his face with such tenderness it made his heart ache. "That I've never brought anyone here before," he admitted quietly. "This place has always been my sanctuary away from everything. But having you here doesn't feel like an intrusion. It feels right." She smiled, reaching up to brush a strand of hair from his forehead. "You know, in Botswana, my grandmother had a saying, 'The walls we build to keep others out also keep us imprisoned.'" Your grandmother sounds wise. She was. Zafina nestled closer, her warmth a balm against the cool night air. She also said that when you find someone who makes your soul recognize its counterpoint in another, you shouldn't let fear keep you apart. Thorn's fingers stilled, on her shoulder. Is that what we are, counterpoints? I think we might be, she whispered. You're all sharp edges and controlled passion. I'm unexpected angles and expressed emotion. We're different, but we fit. He rolled her gently onto her back, hovering above her, searching her eyes. I haven't felt like I fit anywhere in a very long time. Then maybe it's time you made space for new possibilities, she said, pulling him down for a kiss that spoke of promises neither was ready to voice. They moved to his bedroom eventually, where Thorn showed her with actions what he couldn't yet say with words, that she was unraveling him in the most beautiful way, breaking down barriers he had thought impenetrable. Later, tangled in his sheets, her head resting on his chest, Thorn felt something shift inside him. With her warm weight against him and her steady breathing synced with his, the walls he'd built seemed less necessary, more burdensome. My ex-wife, he began quietly, staring at the ceiling. She left because we couldn't have children. Zafina remained still, but he felt her attention sharpen. She blamed me publicly, said I was the reason she'd never be a mother. The words felt foreign in his mouth after years of avoiding them. It became my identity in certain circles, the defective CEO who couldn't even produce an heir. Zafina propped herself up on one elbow, her eyes finding his in the dim light. That's cruel. That's business, he corrected bitterly, or at least the business world I inhabit, where power is measured by legacy, and legacy means bloodline. She traced a finger along his jawline. Do you believe it? What she said about you? The question hit him like a physical blow. No one had ever asked him that before. They'd all simply accepted Alessandra's version or pretended not to hear the rumors out of politeness. I don't know, he admitted finally. We never did find out which one of us had the fertility issues. After she left, I didn't see the point in getting tested. It wouldn't change what people believed. Zafina laid her head back on his chest, her hand coming to rest over his heart. People believe all kinds of things. Doesn't make them true. L'officer, simplicity of her statement washed over him like a balm. For years, he'd lived under the weight of whispers, never challenging them, allowing them to define him. With Zafina in his arms, those whispers suddenly seemed less powerful. When morning came, Thorn awoke to find Zafina sitting cross-legged on his bed, scrolling through her phone, her brow furrowed. "Everything okay?" he asked, voice rough with sleep. She looked up with an expression he couldn't decipher. "I got curious and looked you up." She turned her phone toward him, revealing a business gossip site with an article titled "Westbrook's Legacy Problem. Why Wall Street's Most Eligible Bachelor Remains Childless." Thorn's stomach dropped. "Zafina!" "You didn't tell me how bad." "It was," she interrupted softly. "These articles, they're everywhere. They talk about you like you're defective somehow." He sat up, suddenly feeling exposed in a way that had nothing to do with his physical nakedness. "Now you understand why I wanted to keep you separate from all that. I didn't want those whispers touching us." Zafina set her phone aside and moved closer to him. "But they already do, Thorn. They touch everything in your life because you've let them." Her eyes were fierce now, protective. "These people writing these things, they've made you so afraid of failing that you've stopped trying to prove them wrong." Her words struck with unexpected accuracy. He had stopped trying. Stopped dating seriously, stopped considering a family, stopped fighting against the narrative Alessandra had created. "What would you have me do?" he asked, not expecting an answer. "Live," she said simply, taking his face in her hands. "Live like these whispers are just that, air without substance, and someday maybe they'll blow away on their own." As she kissed him, Thorn felt something crumble inside him. Not the wall he'd built exactly, but perhaps the first brick loosening in its foundation. For the first time in years, he wondered what might be possible if he stopped accepting other people's truths as his own. What he didn't know, as Zafina nestled back into his arms, was that the universe had already set in motion the most powerful refutation possible to the whispers that had haunted him for so long. Chapter 4. Trust Falls. The photo appeared in page 6 on a Tuesday morning. Thorn and Zafina leaving a small jazz club in Harlem, his hand possessively at the small of her back, her face turned up to his in laughter. The headline read, "Westbrook's new art project, trying to prove something." The accompanying article was brief but devastating, speculating whether the notoriously infertile tech mogul was attempting to reclaim his masculinity with a younger woman. It mentioned Zafina by name, describing her as an exotic art curator who seemed unaware of her boyfriend's medical issues. Thorn saw it first, alerted by a text from Marcus with a screenshot and a simple message, "They're vultures. Call me if you need to talk." His immediate instinct was to shield Zafina from it, but he knew that was impossible. If he had seen it, her colleagues at the gallery surely had as well. His stomach twisted with a familiar dread as he called her. "I was just about to call you," she answered, her voice strained. "You've seen it. My assistant practically threw it in my face this morning." She took a deep breath. "Thorn, what exactly am I dealing with here? Because being called exotic is the least concerning part of that article." He closed his eyes, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Can we talk about this in person? Tonight?" "No," she said firmly. "Now, I need to understand what's happening." The silence stretched between them, heavy with all the things he'd avoided telling her. "My office in an hour," he finally said. When Zafina arrived at Westbrook Tower, she was escorted directly to the top floor. Thorn's assistant Lydia gave her a look of mingled curiosity and sympathy before ushering her into the CEO's office. Thorn stood by the windows, hands in his pockets, looking every bit the powerful executive in his tailored navy suit, but his eyes, when he turned to face her, were tired and uncertain. "I should have told you everything from the beginning," he said without preamble. Zafina set her handbag down on his desk, her movements deliberate. "Yes, you should have. After Alessandra left, she gave interviews, said our marriage failed because I couldn't father children, that I was too proud to seek treatment." He walked to his desk, opened a drawer and pulled out a file. "The press ran with it. Financial analysts started questioning my health, suggesting I might have other medical problems that could affect my leadership. Investors got nervous." He handed her the file. Inside were dozens of articles spanning the past 3 years. All variations on the same theme. Thorn Westbrook, the brilliant but damaged CEO who would leave no legacy. "Is it true?" Zafina asked quietly, looking up from the file. "The medical issues? I don't know," Thorn admitted, the words still difficult to say aloud. "Alessandra and I tried for 2 years. Nothing happened. She wanted extensive fertility testing. I was focused on the company's expansion. By the time I was ready to address it, she had already decided I was the problem." "And you never got tested afterward, to know for sure?" He shook his head. "What would be the point? The narrative was already set." Zafina's expression hardened. "The point would be knowing the truth for yourself, regardless of what others believe." She dropped the file back on his desk. "But you'd rather live in uncertainty than risk confirmation." Her assessment stung because it was accurate. He had feared that tests might prove Alessandra right, so he'd chosen ignorance instead. "I thought I was protecting you by keeping all this separate," he said. "I didn't want these whispers to touch you." "But they have," she replied, her voice rising slightly, "and you let me walk into it blindly. Do you know what that feels like? To learn from a gossip column that the man you're falling in love with has been hiding something this significant?" The Words falling in love with hung in the air between them, an accidental confession that neither acknowledged directly. "I'm sorry," he said, the words inadequate but sincere. "I didn't know how to tell you without making it seem like I was damaged somehow." Zafina's expression softened slightly. "We're all damaged, Thorn. That's what makes us human." She crossed the room to him, taking his hands in hers. But relationships require trust. Not just in the good parts of each other, but in our capacity to handle the broken pieces too. He looked down at their joined hands, tan against pale. "Where does this leave us?" "That depends," she said. "Are you ready to stop hiding? Not just me from your world or your world from me, but yourself from the truth?" Thorn felt something shift inside him. The same loosening he'd felt the first night she had stayed in his penthouse, but stronger now, more definitive. "What would that look like?" he asked. "It starts with doctor's appointments," she said firmly. "Finding out what's really going on, medically speaking. No more living in fear of what might be true." The thought made his chest tighten with anxiety. But Zafina's steady gaze anchored him. "And then?" he prompted. "Then we stop pretending this relationship has to exist in shadows." She squeezed his hands. "I'm not asking to be paraded around at your business functions, but I'm not going to be your secret either." He nodded slowly, trying to imagine a life. Without the careful compartmentalization he'd constructed, it was terrifying, but also freeing. "I can't promise I'll get it right immediately," he warned. "I've spent 3 years building these walls." "I don't need immediate," Zafina replied. "I just need honest." She reached up, her palm warm against his cheek. The gentleness of her touch nearly undid him. "I'm not Alessandra," she said softly. "Whatever the truth is, I won't use it against you." Something broke open inside him then, not violently, but like ice cracking in spring, allowing what was frozen to flow again. He pulled her close, burying his face in her neck, breathing in her scent of jasmine and sandalwood. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. She pulled back, her eyes fierce. "Don't do that. Don't put me on a pedestal or yourself beneath it. We're both just people trying to figure this out." He kissed her then, pouring everything he couldn't yet say into the connection between them. When they parted, Zafina's eyes remained closed for a moment, her lips curved in a small smile. "For what it's worth," he said, finding his courage, "I'm falling in love with you too." Her eyes opened, bright with emotion. "Then trust me enough to let me fall with you, all the way, not just the parts you think are safe to show." As she left his office an hour later, Thorn made 2 calls. The first was to his assistant, instructing her to schedule appointments with the top fertility specialists in New York. The second was to cancel a business dinner so he could take Zafina to a restaurant they'd both wanted to try. Right in the heart of Manhattan, where anyone might see them. It was a small step, but as he hung up the phone, Thorn felt lighter than he had in years. For the first time, he was choosing truth over whispers, possibility over fear. And with Zafina by his side, even the unknown seemed less daunting than it had before. Chapter 5. Unexpected News. 6 weeks later, Zafina sat on the edge of her bathtub, staring at the small plastic stick in her hands with its unmistakable double lines. 3 identical tests lay on the counter, all bearing the same result: pregnant. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the 4th test beside the others. This wasn't possible. It couldn't be. And yet the evidence was undeniable. She and Thorn had been careful. Moreover, he had just completed his fertility testing last week, though they were still awaiting the final results. The preliminary findings had been inconclusive. Some potential issues, but nothing definitive. Now this. Zafina pressed her hands to her still flat abdomen, trying to process the reality growing inside her. She had always wanted children someday, but not like this. Not when she and Thorn were still finding their footing, not when his identity had been so wrapped up in his supposed infertility for years. Her phone buzzed with a text from Thorn. "Dinner at 7. I have news from the doctor." Her heart clenched. He had news, and so did she. But which would she deliver first, and how would he react to hers? "See you at 7. Your place," she replied, unable to think of anything else to say for the rest of the day. Zafina moved through her duties at the gallery in a fog. She rearranged a display 3 times before her assistant Kira gently took the artwork from her hands. "Are you feeling all right?" Kira asked, concern in her eyes. "You look pale." "Just tired," Zafina lied, though in truth, the fatigue that had been dogging her for the past 2 weeks suddenly made perfect sense. By the time she arrived at Thorn's penthouse that evening, she had rehearsed a dozen different ways to tell him, each feeling more inadequate than the last. He greeted her with a kiss and a glass of her favorite wine, which she discreetly set aside untouched. If he noticed, he didn't comment, too animated by whatever news he carried. "The specialist called with my full results," he said, leading her to the sofa. "It's mixed news, but better than I feared." Zafina tried to focus, tried to be present for what was clearly an important moment for him. "Tell me," she encouraged, taking his hand. "I have a low sperm count and some motility issues," he explained. "The doctor said natural conception would be difficult but not impossible. With treatment and some lifestyle changes, my chances could improve significantly." He looked relieved, as if a burden had been partially lifted. "It's not the death sentence to fatherhood that Alessandra implied. It's just a challenge." Zafina felt tears spring to her eyes, emotional for reasons he couldn't yet understand. "Thorn, that's wonderful news," he nodded, squeezing her hand. "It means someday, if we wanted to, there could be options for us." The careful way he phrased it, the hypothetical future, the tentativeness, made her heart ache. Here he was, gently opening a door to possibilities, unaware that those possibilities had already manifested. "There's something I need to tell you," she said quietly. Something in her tone made his expression shift from joy to concern. "What is it? Are you all right?" She took a deep breath, looking into his eyes. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. Thorn's face went completely blank, as if his mind couldn't process what she'd said. "That's not possible," he finally whispered. "The doctor just said, difficult but not impossible," she reminded him gently. "I took 4 tests today. They were all positive." He stood abruptly, pacing to the windows. His silhouette against the city lights looked suddenly fragile, his shoulders rigid with tension. "How long have you known?" he asked, his back still to her. "Just today. I've been feeling off for a couple of weeks, but I thought it was stress from the new exhibition." She stayed on the sofa, giving him space. "I wouldn't keep something like this from you, Thorn." He turned then, his face a complex map of emotions she couldn't fully decipher. "No, of course you wouldn't. I didn't mean—" He ran a hand through his hair. "I'm just trying to process this." "So am I," she admitted. "It's unexpected for both of us." "Unexpected," he repeated, a strangled laugh escaping him. "That might be the understatement of the century." Silence filled the room, heavy with unasked questions. Zafina felt cold suddenly, vulnerable in a way she hadn't anticipated. They had only been together for a few months. Was this too much? Too soon? Would he think she had somehow planned this? "Say something," she finally whispered. "Please." Thorn moved back to the sofa, sitting beside her but leaving space between them. His eyes searched her face. "For 3 years," he said slowly, "I've lived with the label that I was somehow less of a man because I couldn't father a child. It became part of who I was, this defect that everyone whispered about." Zafina felt tears threatening again. "Thorn," he held up a hand, asking her to let him finish. When I met you for the first time, I started to believe that maybe those whispers didn't have to define me, that I could be more than what people said I was. His eyes flickered to her still flat stomach. And now this. It's like the universe is playing some cosmic joke. All those years of trying with Alessandra, nothing happened. A few months with you and... I know it's a shock, she said softly. It is for me too. A shock, he echoed. Then something shifted in his expression. No, not just a shock, it's a miracle. Before she could respond, he slid from the sofa to his knees before her, taking both her hands in his. Do you understand what this means? All those whispers, all those rumors, they were wrong. I was wrong to believe them. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You're not upset? Upset? He looked genuinely confused. Zafina, how could I be upset? This is... He struggled for words, then simply pressed his forehead against their joined hands. When he looked up again, his eyes glistened with emotion. I never thought this would be possible for me. Relief washed through her, so powerful she felt dizzy with it. I was afraid you might think it was too soon, that we weren't ready. Are we ready? He asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. I don't know, but I do know that I love you, and whatever comes next, we'll figure it out together. The words, I love you, hung in the air between them, the first time he had said them directly, without qualifiers about falling or trying. Zafina felt her heart expand in her chest. I love you too, she whispered. He rose then, sitting beside her and pulling her close. His hand moved tentatively to her abdomen, resting there with a touch so gentle it made her breath catch. A baby, he murmured, wonder in his voice. Our baby. They sat like that for a long time, the city lights twinkling around them as night deepened. Tomorrow there would be practicalities to discuss, doctors to call, futures to plan. But in this moment there was only this truth. The whispers that had haunted Thorn for years had been silenced by the most elemental proof of life. As darkness settled fully over Manhattan, Thorn led Zafina to the kitchen, where he insisted on cooking for her a simple pasta with fresh vegetables that he prepared with surprising skill. I didn't know you could cook, she said, watching him move confidently around the space. There's a lot you don't know about me yet, he replied with a smile that reached his eyes in a way she rarely saw. When my parents died, I had to learn to take care of myself. Cooking became therapeutic. They ate at the small breakfast nook, their conversation flowing naturally from plans for doctor's appointments to amusing stories from their childhoods. For the first time since they'd met, Thorn seemed completely unburdened, his laughter coming easily, his eyes constantly returning to Zafina's face, as if to reassure himself this was real. After dinner he disappeared briefly and returned with a small wooden box. What's this? She asked as he placed it on the table. Something I've kept hidden away for a long time, he said, opening the lid to reveal yellowed photographs, baby trinkets, and a small silver rattle. These were mine when I was a baby. My mother saved everything. Zafina picked up a worn teddy, bare no bigger than her palm. It's so tiny. I was premature, he explained, his voice soft with remembrance. They didn't think I would make it. My mother used to tell me I was a fighter from day one. His eyes met hers, earnest and vulnerable. Maybe that's why this feels so significant, not just the pregnancy, but what it means. What does it mean to you? She asked, seeing a new side of him emerging. He took her hand, his thumb gently caressing her knuckles. It means I get a second chance at family. After my parents died, I threw myself into building the company. I thought if I couldn't have the family I lost, I'd create something else that would last. His voice caught slightly. Then when Alessandra left and the rumors started, you began to believe you'd never have either. Zafina finished for him, understanding dawning. He nodded, lifting her hand to his lips. Until you. Until tonight. They moved to the balcony, wrapped in a soft blanket against the cool night air. Thorn held her from behind, his arms encircling her waist, his hands protective over where their child grew. "What are you hoping for?" she asked. "Boy or girl?" "Healthy," he replied without hesitation. "Beyond that, I don't care." He paused, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What about names? Have you thought about that yet?" Zafina turned in his arms to face him. "In my culture, names have meaning. They tell a story." "Like Zafina?" She smiled. "My name means hidden treasure. My grandmother chose it because she said I would reveal my true value slowly to those patient enough to discover it." "She was right," Thorn said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "What would you name our child?" "If it's a girl," she said thoughtfully, "I like Zara. It means princess in Swahili, but it can also mean radiance or flower in other languages." "Zara," he repeated, testing the name. "Zara Westbrook. It's perfect." As they stood there under the stars, making plans and sharing dreams, Zafina felt a profound sense of rightness settle over her. Whatever came next, however the world might react to their news, they would face it together with the strongest possible evidence that sometimes the universe had better plans than anyone could have whispered. Chapter 6. The World Finds Out. "You sure about this?" Zafina asked, smoothing the front of her emerald gown. At 14 weeks pregnant, her body had begun to change in subtle ways, a delicate roundness to her previously flat stomach, a new fullness to her breasts, a luminous quality to her skin that no cosmetic could replicate. The custom gown, with its flowing silhouette and intricate golden embroidery along the neckline, had been designed to accentuate rather than hide these changes, celebrating the miracle growing within her. Thorn adjusted his bow tie in the mirror, his eyes meeting hers in the reflection. The softness in his gaze when he looked at her still made her breath catch, even after months together. "Absolutely sure. Unless you've changed your mind." She shook her head, the diamond earrings he'd given her that morning catching the light, like captured stars. "No, it's time." Tonight was the Westbrook Foundation's annual charity gala, the most significant social event on Thorn's calendar. For 3 years, he had attended alone, enduring pitying glances and whispered comments about his solitary state. This year would be different. This year, he would arrive with Zafina on his arm, her pregnancy visible to anyone paying attention, a living testament against the lies that had shadowed him for so long. They had spent the past 8 weeks adjusting to their new reality. Zafina had moved most of her belongings into Thorn's penthouse, though she still kept her apartment as a studio space. They had visited doctors, seen sonograms, heard the rapid flutter of their baby's heartbeat, each moment connecting them more deeply to each other and to the life they were creating together. Each milestone had cemented the miracle growing between them. Now it was time for the world to know. "Ready?" Thorn held out his hand to her, his eyes reflecting both vulnerability and determination. She took it, squeezing gently. "Ready." The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel shimmered with ethereal beauty, crystal chandeliers casting prism-like rainbows across marble floors, arrangements of white orchids and roses creating fragrant islands throughout the space. New York's elite moved through this enchanted setting like exotic creatures in their natural habitat. Business magnates, politicians, celebrities, all gathered under the pretense of charity, but equally invested in the social currency of being, seen at the right events. As Thorn and Zafina entered, a momentary hush fell over the nearest clusters of guests, like a breath collectively held, before conversation resumed at an even more animated pace. Zafina felt the weight of countless eyes upon them, some curious, some calculating, some openly envious. She straightened her shoulders, drawing strength from Thorn's steady presence beside her. "Thorn, there you are." Marcus appeared at their side, champagne in hand, his genuine smile a welcome contrast to the artificial ones surrounding them. "And the lovely Zefina, you look absolutely radiant tonight." His eyes dropped briefly to her midsection, a knowing smile spreading across his face. "News travels fast," Thorne observed dryly. "Only to those who know where to look," Marcus replied with a wink. "Congratulations, both of you. This calls for a toast." He signaled a passing waiter who approached with a tray of champagne flutes. "Sparkling. Water for the lady," Marcus instructed, handing Zefina a crystal flute of bubbling water while taking 2 champagne glasses for himself and Thorne. "To new beginnings," he toasted, raising his glass, his eyes reflecting sincere happiness for his friend. "New beginnings," Thorne echoed, his eyes fixed on Zefina with such naked adoration that she felt warmth bloom across her cheeks and cascade down to her heart. As they circulated through the room, Thorne maintained physical contact with her at all times, a hand at the small of her back, fingers intertwined with hers, a protective arm around her waist. The message was clear. They were a unit, a partnership, and he was proudly, publicly claiming both her and the child she carried. The reactions varied, yet remained predictable. Former associates who had eagerly spread rumors about Thorne's infertility now approached with awkward congratulations, their discomfort evident in forced smiles and darting eyes that couldn't quite meet his. Business rivals watched from a calculated distance, their whispers hidden behind crystal flutes, no doubt already spinning theories about Zefina's motives and the child's paternity. Only younger entrepreneurs, less invested in the old gossip, offered congratulations that rang with genuine warmth. "Thorne Westbrook," a voice called out, the smooth tone carrying a hint of venom beneath its polished surface. Thorne stiffened beside her, his hand tightening imperceptibly at her waist. "What a surprise to see you looking so domesticated." They turned to face an elegant older man with steel-grey hair and eyes like winter frost. Victor Harrington. Thorne had told her, his most ruthless competitor and a board member at Alessandra's father's company. "Victor," Thorne acknowledged with a nod, his voice betraying none of the tension Zefina could feel radiating through his body. "May I introduce Zefina Avery, my partner." Victor's eyes traveled over Zefina with clinical detachment, lingering on her midsection with a raised eyebrow that spoke volumes. "Charmed, I'm sure." His smile never reached his eyes, remaining as cold as a predator's assessment. "Quite the miraculous development, wouldn't you say? Almost unbelievable, really. The implication hung in the air between them, poisonous and deliberate, a carefully crafted barb designed to wound. "The only unbelievable thing," Zefina replied before Thorne could speak, her voice melodic yet edged with steel, "is how some people cling to outdated gossip when reality proves them wrong." She smiled with honeyed sweetness, though her eyes remained cool as river stones. "But I suppose that's the difference between those who adapt to new information and those who, well, stagnate in their own bitterness." Victor's face hardened, the mask of civility slipping for just a moment to reveal the anger beneath. Before he could respond, another guest called his name, providing a convenient excuse for his departure. "We'll be watching with interest," he said to Thorne as he moved away, the words carrying an unmistakable threat. "Parenthood is quite the challenge, I hear." When he was out of earshot, Thorne turned to Zefina with a mixture of amazement and pride illuminating his features. "That was necessary," she finished for him, her thumb gently stroking the back of his hand. "I'm not going to stand quietly while people like him try to diminish what we have, what we're building together." He touched her cheek with reverent tenderness. "Have I told you today how much I love you?" "Yes, but I wouldn't mind hearing it again," she replied, her smile reaching her eyes this time, warming them to amber in the chandelier light. As the evening progressed, Thorne was pulled away briefly for foundation business. leaving Zafina by the elaborate flower arrangements near the bar. She was admiring the delicate cascade of white orchids when she overheard two women nearby, their voices carrying just enough to reach her. She must be, half his age? Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? Absolutely. The way I heard it, Westbrook Innovations is planning to go public next year. Nothing secures investor confidence like a stable family image, if it's even his. She's probably slept with half of Manhattan to land a billionaire. Zafina's hand instinctively moved to her stomach, as if to shield her child from the poison of such words. Before she could decide whether to confront them or walk away, a third voice joined the conversation. Ladies, if you're going to speculate about someone's private life, you might want to ensure they're not standing 3 feet away from you. The women turned, faces flushing as they saw Lydia, Thorne's executive assistant, standing with arms crossed and a dangerous smile on her face. Ms. Avery is a respected curator with multiple advanced degrees who's been exhibited in galleries worldwide, Lydia continued pleasantly. And Mr. Westbrook's personal life is exactly that. Personal. Now, I believe the exit is that way, should you find yourselves suddenly remembering other engagements. The women retreated, muttering apologies. Lydia approached Zafina with a warm smile. Don't let them get to you, she said. They're just jealous. In the 3 years I've worked for Thorne, I've never seen him as happy as he's been these past few months. Thank you, Zafina replied, genuinely touched, for both the defense and the insight. Anytime. Besides, I'm looking forward to having a baby around the office. We could use a little more joy in that tower. When Thorne returned to her side, Zafina nestled against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. Everything okay? He asked, sensing a shift in her mood. Better now, she assured him. Just reminded that not everyone will be happy for us. His arm tightened around her. Their opinions don't matter, don't they? She asked softly. Tonight was about making a statement, about reclaiming your narrative. But the whispers won't stop just because we want them to. No, he agreed, but they'll lose their power. Every day you're with me, every day our child grows, it's living proof that what they believed about me was wrong. As the evening drew to a close, they stood together on the terrace. The city lights spread out before them like a carpet of stars. Thorne placed his hand over the gentle swell of her abdomen, and Zafina covered it with her own. Whatever they say, he murmured against. Her hair, this is real, this is true. And for that moment, with the warmth of his body against hers and their child growing between them, the whispers faded to nothing, irrelevant in the face of the future they were building together. What they didn't see was the photographer on the roof of the building opposite, capturing the intimate moment with a telephoto lens. By morning, their image would be splashed across every gossip site and business publication in the country, accompanied by headlines that would bring the whispers roaring back to life. Chapter 7, Family Matters. I'm not sure you understand what you've walked into, Zafina. Naledi Avery sat across from her daughter in Thorne's expansive living room, her posture regal despite the 20-hour flight from Gaborone that had brought her to New York. At 56, she remained striking, her silver-streaked locks framing a face that had passed its beauty to her daughter. "Mama, I know what I'm doing," Zafina replied, pouring tea into delicate porcelain cups. At 5 months pregnant, her belly was now prominently rounded beneath her loose silk tunic. "Do you?" Naledi raised an eyebrow. 3 days I've been here, and already I've seen your face on 2 tabloids in the airport. She picked up a magazine. From the coffee table, where Zafina and Thorne's gala photo was splashed across the cover with the headline, "Westbrook's Miracle Baby." Sources questioned paternity. Zafina sighed, setting down the teapot. People will always talk. This isn't the village gossips, MMA. This is a different world. Naledi leaned forward. These wealthy men, they live by different rules. Thorne isn't like that. All men with power are like that in some way, Naledi countered firmly. Your father was a respected professor, and still he had a second family I knew nothing about until after his death. The old pain in her mother's voice made Zafina reach across to squeeze her hand. I understand, Mama, and I'm sorry for what he did to you. But Thorn and I have built our relationship on honesty from the start. Naledi studied her daughter, concern evident in her eyes. You love him. I do. And the child? Zafina's hand moved protectively to her belly. Was unexpected, but is very much wanted by both of us. Naledi sighed, her expression softening. Then I will try to keep an open mind. But I will not leave until I am certain he deserves you both. The elevator chimed, announcing Thorn's return, and from the office he entered the living room, loosening his tie, his face lighting up at the sight of Zafina. Dr. Avery, he acknowledged Naledi respectfully. I hope you're finding everything comfortable. Quite, she replied, assessing him with the same penetrating gaze she had used on errant students during her decades as a linguistics professor. Zafina tells me you've been meeting with lawyers this week. Thorn nodded, taking a seat beside Zafina and instinctively placing a protective hand on her rounded belly. The baby responded with a strong kick that made him smile with wonder. Yes, updating my will and establishing a trust for the baby. He hesitated briefly. And discussing a prenuptial agreement. Zafina's head snapped up. A what? It's standard in my position, he explained gently. It would protect both of us. From what, exactly? Her voice had cooled several degrees. Thorn looked uncomfortable. It's just business, Zafina. No, she said quietly. This is us, our family, not a merger or acquisition. Naledi watched the exchange silently, her keen eyes missing nothing. Perhaps I should give you two some privacy, she said, rising gracefully. No, stay, Mama, Zafina insisted. Since we're discussing family matters, you should be part of this conversation. Thorn ran a hand through his dark hair, displaying the telltale gesture Zafina had come to recognize as a sign of his discomfort. My attorneys believe it's necessary, given the unique circumstances. What circumstances? Zafina's voice was dangerously calm. The timing, the pregnancy, the scrutiny we're under. Understanding dawned on her face. You're protecting yourself from me. The hurt in her voice was palpable. You still don't fully trust this, do you? Us? That's not it, he protested. It's just business, she finished for him, rising with as much dignity as her pregnant body allowed. Excuse me, I need some air. She moved to the terrace, sliding the glass door firmly closed behind her. Through the transparent barrier, Thorn could see her shoulders shaking slightly as she fought to maintain her composure. You've hurt her, Naledi observed quietly. That wasn't my intention, Thorn replied, rubbing his face tiredly. I'm trying to protect everyone's interests. My daughter isn't interested in your money, Mr. Westbrook. I know that. Do you? Naledi fixed him with a penetrating stare. Because your actions suggest otherwise. Thorn met her gaze directly. Dr. Avery, I love your daughter more than I've ever loved anyone. This child, his voice caught briefly, is a miracle I never thought I'd experience. But I've spent years having my life dissected in public, my personal failures broadcast to the world. I'm trying to shield both of them from that. By treating Zafina like a potential threat, he winced. That's not, it is exactly how it appears, Naledi interrupted. In my culture, when a man loves a woman, he brings cattle to her family as lobola, bride price. It's not about buying her, it's about honoring what her family is giving up and showing respect for what he is receiving. She leaned forward. What respect do you show my daughter with these prenuptial discussions? Thorn was silent for a long moment, considering her words. You're right, he finally said quietly. I've been letting fear drive my decisions again. What are you afraid of, Mr. Westbrook? His gaze drifted to Zafina on the terrace. Losing them, having this happiness taken away somehow. Naledi's expression softened slightly. And you think legal documents will prevent that? No, he admitted. But it's what I know. Contracts, provisions, contingencies. Perhaps it's time to learn something new. She stood gracefully, gathering her delicate teacup. In my homeland, we have a proverb. A child is what transforms a house into a home. Your child arrives soon, Mr. Westbrook. The question remains whether you're building a true home or merely securing valuable assets. She left him with that thought, retreating to her guest room. Thorne remained seated for several minutes, her words echoing in his mind. Finally, he rose and joined Zafina on the terrace. She didn't turn as he approached, her gaze fixed on the city skyline. I don't want your money, Thorne. I know, he said softly, standing beside her but not touching her yet. And I'm sorry. I was wrong. She finally looked at him, her eyes still damp. I never asked for any of this. The spotlight, the scrutiny, the rumors, I only wanted you. And I've been so focused on protecting what we have that I've been undermining it instead. He reached for her hand tentatively. No prenup, no legal barriers between us. Just trust. She looked down at their joined hands. Are you sure? Your lawyers won't be happy. I don't care. His voice was firm. Your mother made me see something important. I've been approaching our relationship like a business transaction because that's where I feel safest. But that's not what family is about. Zafina's expression softened. She can be quite persuasive. She reminds me of you, Thorne said with a small smile. Or rather, you remind me of her, strong, principled, unwilling to accept less than you deserve. He drew her gently into his arms, his hand cradling her rounded belly between them. I'm sorry I hurt you. I promise I'm trying to be better than the man I was before you. She rested her forehead against his chest. I don't need you to be perfect, Thorne. I just need you to be honest, with me and with yourself. That night, as Naledi observed them over dinner, she saw something shift between them. A new openness in Thorne, a renewed trust in Zafina's eyes. When he spoke of the nursery he was designing, his excitement was genuine. When he asked Naledi about Swana naming traditions, his interest was sincere. Later, as Zafina walked her mother to her room, Naledi squeezed her daughter's hand. He loves you, she admitted. Perhaps not in the way men loved in my generation. But genuinely, is that your approval, Mama? Zafina asked with a small smile. It's acknowledgement that perhaps I was too quick to judge. Naledi touched her daughter's cheek, but remind him that in our culture, a child belongs to more than just its parents. This baby will have a grandmother who will cross oceans to protect them both. As Zafina returned to the bedroom she now shared with Thorne, she found him sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at a small velvet box in his hands. What's that? She asked, though she suspected she knew. He looked up, vulnerability naked in his eyes. I've had this for weeks. I was waiting for the right moment, but I kept hesitating. He opened the box, revealing a stunning emerald ring surrounded by diamonds. I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want legal documents between us. I want vows. Zafina's hands went to her mouth as he slid from the bed to one knee before her. Zafina Naledi Avery, will you marry me? Not because of the baby, or what people might say, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. As he slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to embrace her, their child kicked forcefully between them, as if adding its own approval to the moment. Outside the bedroom door, unnoticed by either of them, Naledi smiled softly to herself before returning to her room. Perhaps this American businessman was worthy of her daughter after all. Chapter 8. Betrayal Unearthed. Thorne sat alone in his office, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the polished surface of his desk. Outside, Manhattan glowed, golden in the fading light, a city of ambition caught in amber. The view no longer captivated him as it once had. His world had shifted, its center now located not in gleaming skyscrapers, but in the quiet moments with Zafina and the future they were building together. His attention was fixed on the email that had arrived 10 minutes earlier. The sender was a name he hadn't seen in his inbox for 3 years. Alessandra Harrington Westbrook. We need to talk. It's important. Meet me at Le Bernardin at 8 p.m. tonight. No explanation, no pleasantries. Just a command, as if she still had the right to make. Demands of his time, as if the years and pain between them could be bridged by a simple dinner invitation. His finger hovered over the delete button, but something held him back. An instinct honed through years of business negotiations. In 7 months of pregnancy, Zafina had experienced no complications, but last week's checkup had revealed slightly elevated blood pressure, enough for the doctor to recommend reduced stress and increased rest. The last thing she needed was to worry about his ex-wife suddenly reappearing like a ghost from a past they'd begun to exorcise, which was precisely why he needed to handle this himself, quickly and quietly, to protect the peace they'd found together. He texted Zafina that a business dinner would keep him late, hating the lie even as he typed it, but believing it necessary for her well-being. Then he confirmed the meeting with Alessandra, adding only, "I'll give you 30 minutes." Le Bernardin was busy as always, the hushed murmur of important conversations flowing beneath soft classical music. Alessandra had secured a private dining room in the back, where indiscretions and business deals alike could remain sheltered from curious eyes. When Thorne arrived, she was already seated, a glass of wine captured between her perfectly manicured fingers. At 38, she remained striking, her honey-blonde hair now cut in a sophisticated bob that framed her delicate features, her makeup applied with an artist's precision, her figure showcased in a burgundy dress that whispered of both power and seduction. "Thorne," she greeted him, rising to kiss the air beside his cheek, her familiar perfume, jasmine and sandalwood, momentarily disorienting him with unwanted memories. "You look well. Fatherhood seems to agree with you. Let's skip the pleasantries," he replied, maintaining his distance, refusing the chair she gestured toward. "Why am I here, Alessandra?" A flicker of annoyance crossed her face, quickly masked by the practiced smile she had perfected over years of corporate events. "At least sit down. I've ordered your usual scotch." Her voice carried that melodic quality that had once entranced him, now hollow to his ears. Reluctantly he took the seat, though he left the amber liquid untouched, a small act of defiance against her presumption. 30 minutes, Alessandra. That's all you get." Something flickered across her face, annoyance perhaps, or frustration that he was no longer susceptible to her carefully calculated charms. "Fine, I'll be direct. I've been seeing the stories about your situation." "My situation?" he repeated coolly, one eyebrow slightly raised. "The pregnancy," she clarified, taking a deliberate sip of wine. "Your young girlfriend. The timing is quite something, isn't it? Just when Westbrook Innovations is preparing to go public." Thorne's jaw tightened. "If you ask me here to discuss my personal life, this meeting is over." "I'm concerned about you, Thorne," she said, her voice softening to the tone she had always used when trying to manipulate him. "This girl, her name is Zafina," he interrupted. "My fiancée." "Fiancée," Alessandra echoed, something hard entering her eyes. "How convenient. Do you really think she loves you?" Or is it the billionaire and the security for her child that she loves? You don't know her, Thorne said evenly, and you certainly don't know anything about our relationship. I know that men like you are targets, she replied, especially when they're vulnerable. And you, Thorne, you've always been vulnerable to women who make you feel whole. The implicit dig at his fertility issues made his blood boil, but he kept his expression neutral. Was there an actual purpose to this meeting, Alessandra? Or did you just want to insult my fiancé and question my judgment? She leaned forward, dropping her voice. I'm trying to protect you. Have you considered that this child might not be yours? That perhaps she got pregnant deliberately to trap you? Thorne stood abruptly. This conversation is over. Wait, Alessandra said quickly, reaching for his arm. There's something else, something I need to tell you. Against his better judgment, Thorne paused. What? She took a deep breath, suddenly looking uncertain. It's about our fertility issues. The real reason we couldn't conceive. A cold feeling settled in Thorne's stomach. Go on. It wasn't you, she said quietly, her gaze finally dropping to the tablecloth. It was me. The words hung in the air between them, simple yet devastating. In their implications, the restaurant's ambient sounds seemed to fade away, leaving only the thunderous beating of Thorne's heart in his ears. What are you saying? He asked, his voice barely audible, a tremor betraying the storm of emotions beneath his carefully controlled. Exterior. I had endometriosis, severe. She traced the rim of her wineglass with one manicured finger, still not meeting his eyes. The doctors told me after our second round of treatments that natural conception would be nearly impossible for me. She paused, finally looking up. I never told you. Thorne felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath him, years of self-doubt and pain crystallizing into this moment of terrible clarity. The air seemed to thin, making each breath a conscious effort. You let me believe. His voice broke, emotion finally fracturing his composure. You let the entire world believe it was my fault. I was protecting myself, she defended, a flash of the old Alessandra, calculating, self-preserving, showing. Through the veneer of contrition. My father's company was going through that big expansion. Being seen as barren would have undermined everything, the traditional family image we were cultivating for investors, my position on the board. So you destroyed my reputation instead. Thorne's voice was deadly quiet, each word weighted with the accumulated pain of years spent believing himself fundamentally flawed. You stood in front of journalists and called me defective. You let me spend 3 years thinking there was something fundamentally wrong with me. I did what I had to do, she replied, a hint of defiance returning to her voice like an old, familiar melody. Her shoulders straightened almost imperceptibly, armor sliding back into place. And clearly, it wasn't that damaging to you. You're about to have a child, aren't you? Your company is thriving. In the end, perhaps I did you a favor. The casual dismissal of his pain ignited something primal in Thorne's chest, a white-hot ember of rage he thought long extinguished. His hands trembled beneath the table, not with weakness but with the effort of restraint. Do you have any idea, he began, each word carefully measured despite the tempest within, what those rumors did to me? How they followed me like shadows, darkening every triumph, every milestone? How they made me question my worth, not just as a man, but as a human being deserving of love? Oh, please, Alessandra scoffed, waving her hand dismissively, the diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist catching the light. You've always been so dramatic. It was business, Thorne. I needed a clean break with public sympathy on my side. It was our marriage, he countered, leaning forward, his voice dropping to an intensity that made her instinctively pull back. It was the sacred trust between two people who had once promised to protect each other. It was my life you were methodically destroying piece by piece. She shrugged elegantly, the movement fluid and practiced like everything else about her. We all do what we must to survive in this world. Thorn stared at her, truly seeing her for perhaps the first time. The beautiful face he had once traced, with reverent fingertips, now seemed hollow, a perfect facade with nothing of substance behind it. The eyes he had once drowned in now appeared cold and calculating, assessing him as one might appraise property or evaluate a business risk. "Why tell me now?" he asked, the question hanging between them like delicate crystal. "After all this time, after all this damage, why this moment of truth? A flicker of something, guilt, perhaps, or simply pragmatic calculation, crossed her face before she composed herself into elegant nonchalance. "I'm getting remarried. Richard knows about my condition, but I didn't want him hearing some twisted version from someone else. Too many people in our circle know the truth." "So this isn't about conscience," Thorn said, bitter realization washing over him. "It's not about making amends or seeking forgiveness. It's about controlling your narrative." A humorless laugh escaped him, the sound sharp as broken glass. "Some things never change. I thought you deserved to know," she said, defensiveness edging into her perfectly modulated voice. "Especially now, with the baby coming. I didn't want you to always wonder if it was really mine." Thorn finished for her, disgust coloring his words. "Unlike you, Alessandra, some people are capable of honesty in relationships. Some people build connections on trust rather than convenience. Zafina has never given me reason to doubt her." "Everyone has their price, Thorn," Alessandra replied. "Even your perfect Zafina." Something in her tone made Thorn pause. "What have you done?" "Nothing," she said too quickly. "I'm merely suggesting that—" "What have you done?" he repeated, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Alessandra sighed dramatically, reaching for her designer purse and withdrawing a thick envelope. "I may have had someone investigate her background. For your protection, of course." Thorn snatched the envelope but didn't open it. "You investigated my fiancé. Consider it a wedding present," she said with a brittle smile. "Knowledge is power, after all." For a moment, Thorn was tempted to tear the envelope to pieces in front of her, to scatter the fragments across the pristine tablecloth like confetti at a funeral. But a deeper instinct, the need to know what weapons might be used against Zafina, to prepare for whatever attack might come, made him slip it into his jacket pocket instead. "We're done," he said flatly, the finality in his voice unmistakable. "Don't contact me again." "Thorn!" she called as he turned to leave, a note of desperation finally cracking her perfect composure. "What I did, it wasn't personal." He paused at the door, looking back at her one last time. The woman who had once been the center of his world now seemed small somehow, diminished by her own machinations. "That's what makes it unforgivable, Alessandra," he said softly, not with anger, but with the quiet certainty of a man who had finally found his truth. "It should have been personal. We were husband and wife, bound by promises meant to transcend business and ambition. But to you, I was just another asset in your portfolio, something to leverage when useful, something to discard when damaged." He walked out of the restaurant into the cool Manhattan night. A heaviness settled in his chest, like ancient sediment finally brought to the surface. For 3 years, he had lived with the weight of whispers created by Alessandra's calculated lie. Now learning the truth brought no satisfaction, only renewed grief for the years lost to self-doubt and a profound gratitude for the woman waiting at home, whose love had begun to heal what Alessandra's betrayal had broken. The city lights blurred around him as he made his way to the waiting car, each step carrying him further from his past and closer to the future he was building with Zafina. What he didn't see was the man sitting at the bar, discreetly sliding his phone back into his pocket, the recording of their entire conversation now safely stored for future use. Victor Harrington hadn't trusted his daughter to handle this meeting properly, so he had taken precautions. By morning, the recording would be in the hands of his media contacts, edited to present Thorne as the aggressor, the bitter ex-husband, unable to move on despite his new relationship and impending fatherhood. The whispers, it seemed, were not done with Thorne Westbrook yet. Like shadows at dusk, they would stretch and distort, reaching for him even as he walked toward the light. Chapter 9. New Beginnings. The recording hit the internet on a Tuesday morning. "It wasn't you," Alessandra's voice crystal clear. "It was me." "You let me believe," Thorne's voice breaking. "You let the entire world believe it was my fault." The unedited conversation had been leaked to every major business publication and gossip site. Alessandra's confession about her fertility issues and her deliberate campaign to blame Thorne spread like wildfire across social media. By noon, it was trending nationally. Thorne had been in the middle of a crucial board meeting when his phone began buzzing incessantly. After the fifth consecutive call from Marcus, he had excused himself, only to find his world once again turned upside down. "It's everywhere," Marcus told him. "Every word, Thorne. How did this happen?" "Victor," Thorne realized immediately. "He must have recorded us." Well, his plan backfired spectacularly. Alessandra sounds like a sociopath, and public opinion is swinging hard in your favor. But Thorne wasn't thinking about public opinion. He was thinking about Zephina, 7 months pregnant and under doctor's orders to avoid stress. She would see this. There was no way to shield her from it. He rushed home to find her sitting on the sofa, her tablet in her lap, tears streaming down her face as she listened to the recording. "Zephina," he said gently, settling beside her and taking the tablet. "Away! You shouldn't be listening to this. Why didn't you tell me you were meeting her?" Her voice was hurt, confused. "I thought I was protecting you," he admitted. "The doctor said to keep your stress levels down, and I didn't want you worrying about Alessandra suddenly reappearing. So you lied to me instead." She wiped her eyes. After everything we've talked about regarding trust, Thorne felt shame wash over him. "You're right. I should have told you." "Yes, you should have." Her hand moved to her belly where their daughter had been particularly active today. "What was in the envelope she gave you? I heard her mention it." Thorne hesitated. In the chaos of the leaked recording, he had almost forgotten about Alessandra's wedding present. He'd placed the sealed envelope in his desk drawer, unwilling to dignify her interference by opening it. "She claimed to have investigated your background." Zephina's eyes widened. "And you didn't think that was worth mentioning?" "I didn't open it," he assured her quickly. "I don't care what's in it." "But I do." Her voice was firm. "If someone is digging into my past, I have a right to know what they found." Reluctantly, Thorne retrieved the envelope from his study. They sat together as he opened it, revealing several typed pages with photographs attached. The investigation was thorough, but ultimately mundane. Zephina's student loan debt from graduate school, her brief relationship with a fellow curator, who now headed a major gallery in Paris, financial struggles her mother had faced after her father's death, a distant cousin with a minor criminal record. "This is the best she could find?" Zephina asked, incredulous. "Normal life challenges." "She was fishing," Thorne said, relief evident in his voice, "looking for leverage that doesn't exist." Zephina leaned back against the cushions, one hand absently rubbing her swollen belly. "What happens now? With the recording out there?" "Now the world knows the truth," Thorne said simply. "The whispers about me were based on a lie." "Does that matter?" "To you?" she asked, studying his face. "Being vindicated?" Thorne considered the question carefully. A month ago it would have meant everything, but now He placed his hand over hers on her belly. Now it feels almost irrelevant. The only opinion that matters to me is yours, and our daughter's someday. Zafina's expression softened. I'm still angry you didn't tell me about meeting Alessandra. I know, he acknowledged. It was a mistake, one I won't repeat. Good, she said firmly, because we're partners, Thorn, in everything. She shifted, uncomfortably, wincing slightly. Are you okay? He asked, immediately concerned. Just Braxton Hicks contractions. The doctor said they're normal. She tried to smile reassuringly, but another wince betrayed her discomfort. I'm calling Dr. Reynolds, Thorn decided, reaching for his phone. This doesn't seem normal. 20 minutes later, they were in his car, speeding toward the hospital. The contractions had intensified, coming at regular intervals that alarmed both of them. It's too early, Zafina whispered, fear evident in her voice. She's not due for another 8 weeks. Thorn gripped the steering wheel, forcing his voice to remain calm. Everything will be fine. Dr. Reynolds is meeting us there. In the hospital, events moved with dizzying speed. Preeclampsia, the doctors explained, dangerously high blood pressure. They needed to deliver the baby now to protect both mother and child. As they prepared Zafina for an emergency C-section, Thorn's phone buzzed with a notification. The Singapore investors were waiting for their final meeting before committing to the public offering. Hundreds of millions of dollars hung in the balance. His CFO was calling, desperate for instructions. Thorn silenced his phone without a second thought. Mr. Westbrook? A nurse approached. We're ready for you. In surgical. Scrubs. He sat beside Zafina's head as they began the procedure, holding her hand and murmuring reassurances. Fear like he had never known gripped him as he watched the doctors work with focused urgency. Blood pressure dropping, someone called out, and Zafina's hand went limp in his. She's crashing, another voice shouted. Get him out of here! No! Thorn resisted as hands pulled him away from Zafina. I need to stay with her! Sir, please, a nurse urged. Let us save them both. The next 2 hours were the longest of Thorn's life. He paced the waiting room, alternating between prayer and silent bargaining with whatever higher power might be listening. Take anything, his company, his wealth, his reputation, but spare Zafina and their child. When Dr. Reynolds finally appeared, her surgical mask pulled down, Thorn could barely breathe. They're both stable, she said, and his knees nearly buckled. With relief. Your daughter is small, 4 pounds 3 ounces, but her lungs are strong. She'll need some time in the NICU, but her prognosis is excellent. And Zafina? He asked, his voice cracking. She lost a lot of blood, but she's young and healthy. She'll recover fully with time and rest. Thorn closed his eyes, overwhelming gratitude washing through him. Can I see them? Your daughter first, Dr. Reynolds said. Then Zafina when she wakes up. The NICU maintained a hushed atmosphere, broken only by the gentle beeping of monitors. A nurse led Thorn to an incubator where a tiny being lay, impossibly small yet perfect in every detail. Tubes and wires connected her to machines, but beneath them he could see her chest rising and falling with determined breaths. Here she is, the nurse said softly. Would you like to touch her? Thorn nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. The nurse showed him how to place his hand through the opening in the incubator. With infinite gentleness, he touched his daughter's tiny hand. Her fingers, no bigger than grains of rice, reflexively curled around his index finger. That moment, something fundamental shifted within Thorn Westbrook. All the whispers, all the business concerns, all the worries about reputation and legacy, they all fell away, utterly meaningless compared to the miracle before him. Hello, little one, he whispered, tears flowing freely down his face. I'm your dad. He stayed there for hours, watching her sleep, marveling at the perfection of her miniature features, the delicate curve of her ears, the soft bow of her lips, the tiny furrow between her brows that reminded him so much of Zafina's. concentrated expression. "She has your nose," the night nurse observed when she came to check the baby's vitals. "And strong lungs, too. She'll be a fighter like her father." "And her mother," Thorne added, thinking of Zafina's quiet strength. "She comes from a line of remarkable women." When the nurse left them alone again, Thorne began to talk to his daughter, his voice a gentle murmur in the quiet room. "Your mother is the most extraordinary person I've ever known," he told her. "She saw through all my defenses, all the walls I built to protect myself. She taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness. You'll learn that from her, too." He stroked her tiny arm with one finger. "And I promise you this. I will never let the world's whispers define you the way I let them define me. You will always know how precious you are, how worthy, how loved." The baby's eyes fluttered open briefly, dark eyes that seemed impossibly aware, and Thorne felt as if she were looking straight into his soul. "Your grandmother Naledi says that in her culture children are born with ancient wisdom," he continued softly, "that they choose their parents. If that's true, thank you for choosing us. We'll try to be worthy of that choice." A respiratory therapist entered to check the baby's oxygen levels, smiling at the sight of the powerful CEO hunched protectively over the tiny incubator. "You can hold her for a few minutes if you'd like," she offered. "Skin-to-skin contact is very beneficial for preemies." Thorne's eyes widened. "Is it safe? She seems so fragile." "She's stronger than she looks," the therapist assured him. "Here, unbutton your shirt and sit in that recliner. I'll bring her to you." With careful movements, Thorne did as instructed. When the therapist placed the impossibly small bundle against his bare chest, covering them both with a warm blanket, he felt a surge of emotion so powerful it took his breath away. His daughter snuggled against him, her heartbeat a rapid flutter against his own. "That's it," the therapist said, arranging the oxygen tube carefully. "Just relax. She knows who you are. She can sense your heartbeat, your breathing, your voice. You're her safe place." Her safe place. The words echoed in Thorne's mind as he cradled his daughter. All his life, he had sought safe places. His penthouse above the city, his position of power, the walls he'd built around his heart. Now, this tiny being looked to him for safety, for protection. "I'll be right back," the therapist said. "Just press the call button if you need anything." Left alone with his daughter, Thorne began humming softly, an old lullaby his mother used to sing to him. As he did, the baby's vital signs on the monitor steadied, her tiny body relaxing against him. "You like music, don't you?" he whispered. "Your mother sings beautifully. When you're bigger, she'll teach you songs from Botswana, stories past, down through generations." The baby made a soft sound, almost like a sigh, and Thorne felt his heart constrict with love so fierce it was almost painful. "I never understood before," he confessed to her, "why people would rearrange their entire lives for their children. What could possibly matter more than success, achievement, legacy?" He pressed the gentlest of kisses to the top of her head, where wisps of dark hair curled against her scalp. "But now I know, nothing matters more than this, than you." When the nurse returned an hour later, she found the powerful CEO asleep in the recliner, his newborn daughter peaceful against his chest, both their faces bearing identical expressions of contentment. "Mr. Westbrook," she said softly, hating to disturb them. "We need to place her back in the incubator now." Thorne awakened immediately, his arms instinctively cradling his daughter more securely. "Just another minute," he pleaded, not ready to relinquish the connection. The nurse smiled, understanding. "Of course. Take your time." In that extra minute, Thorne made a silent vow to his daughter that he would be the father she deserved, that he would create a world where she would never doubt her worth or her place in it, that he would protect her not by building walls around her, but by teaching her to be strong enough to face whatever came. When he finally allowed the nurse to return the baby to her incubator, his arms felt empty, but his heart was fuller than it had ever been. Hours later, when Zafina finally awoke in the recovery room, Thorn was at her side instantly, his eyes shining with emotions too profound for words. "The baby?" she asked immediately, her voice hoarse. "She's perfect," he assured her, stroking her hair. "Small but mighty, just like her mother." Relief flooded Zafina's face. "Can I see her?" "Soon," he promised. "Once you're a bit stronger." Zafina's eyes filled with tears. "I was so scared, Thorn." "So was I," he admitted, bringing her hand to his lips. "I've never been more terrified in my life." "The investors," she remembered suddenly. "Your meeting doesn't matter," he interrupted, firmly. "Not even slightly. I'll handle it later." She studied his face, seeing something new there, a certainty, a clarity that hadn't been there before. "What happened to you?" she asked softly. Thorn smiled, the expression transforming his face. "I met our daughter, and I finally understood what truly matters." When the nurse brought photos of the baby, they spent an hour debating names, finally settling on one that honored both their heritages: Zara Naledi Westbrook. "It's perfect," Zafina murmured, tracing the tiny face in the photograph. "She's perfect." As she drifted back to sleep, Thorn checked his phone for the first time in hours. Dozens of missed calls and messages about both the leaked recording and the missed investor meeting. Marcus had handled the latter, apologizing to the Singaporeans and rescheduling for the following week. The last message was from his PR team, asking for direction on how to respond to the media frenzy surrounding Alessandra's recorded confession. Thorn looked at Zafina's peaceful face, then at the photo of their daughter. With sudden clarity, he knew exactly what needed to be done. He typed a quick response. "Schedule a press conference for next week. Westbrook Tower, full media presence." It was time to end the whispers once and for all, not just for himself, but for his family. Chapter 10. Truth in full light. The grand ballroom of Westbrook Tower gleamed under crystal chandeliers, filled to capacity with New York's business elite, media figures, and social luminaries. The occasion, officially the 10th anniversary celebration of Westbrook Innovations, had drawn unprecedented attention, partly due to the company's imminent public offering and partly due to the scandal still reverberating from Alessandra's leaked confession. Behind the stage, Thorn adjusted his tie, a curious calm settling over him. 2 weeks had passed since Zara's birth. She remained in the NICU, but was growing stronger every day, already surpassing the doctor's expectations. Zafina had recovered remarkably well, though she still tired easily. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked, joining him in the small preparation room. "The board is nervous about what you might say." "The board will survive," Thorn replied. "This isn't about them. The investors are watching closely," Marcus warned. "After missing that meeting, let them watch," Thorn interrupted gently. "Tonight isn't about them either." Marcus studied his friend's face, noting the profound change there. Gone was the tightly controlled CEO perpetually braced for judgment. In his place stood a man with the peaceful certainty of someone who had found what truly mattered. "Your family is here," Marcus said, his tone softening. "Zafina insisted on coming, despite the doctor's recommendations for rest." Thorn smiled. "She's stubborn that way." "She's good for you," Marcus acknowledged. "I've never seen you like this, Thorn. Even before all the rumors and whispers, you were always driven, but there was an emptiness to it." "There was," Thorn agreed. "I just didn't recognize it until Zafina showed me what was missing." A staff member appeared at the door. "5 minutes, Mr. Westbrook." Marcus squeezed his shoulder. "Whatever you say out there tonight, I'm with you." As Thorn stepped onto the stage, the assembled crowd applauded politely. Camera flashes erupted from the media section. He spotted familiar faces throughout the room, business rivals who had gleefully spread rumors about his health and virility, board members who had questioned his personal stability, investors who had deemed him a risky prospect due to his lack of traditional family values. But his eyes sought only one face. Zafina sat at the front table, resplendent in a deep blue gown designed to accommodate her post-pregnancy body. Her mother sat beside her, regal and watchful. As their eyes met, Zafina smiled, and Thorn felt his heart expand in his chest. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice steady and clear over the microphone. "Officially, we're here to celebrate a decade of innovation and growth at Westbrook. But I have something more important to discuss." A subtle tension rippled through the crowd. For the past 3 years, many of you in this room have participated in spreading rumors about my health and my personal life. His direct approach caused uncomfortable shifting among the attendees. Some of you did it out of genuine concern, some out of business strategy, and some simply because gossip is the currency of our social circles. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across those who had been the most persistent whispers. "A few weeks ago, you all heard the truth. My ex-wife's recorded confession made it clear that the rumors about my fertility were fabricated. I could stand here tonight and demand apologies or name those who used these falsehoods against me professionally. I could announce lawsuits or threaten retaliation." The tension in the room heightened, several attendees exchanging nervous glances. "But I'm not going to do any of those things," Thorn continued, his voice softening. "Because 2 weeks ago, something happened that changed everything for me. My daughter was born." A ripple of whispers swept the room. Zara Naledi Westbrook arrived early and small, but fighting with everything she has. Watching her tiny body work so hard just to breathe, I realized how utterly meaningless all of this is. He gestured to the opulent surroundings. The gossip, the business rivalries, the constant positioning for advantage, none of it matters compared to the miracle of that little life. His eyes found Zafina again, who was watching him with tears shimmering in her eyes. "Meeting my daughter made me understand what real strength looks like. It isn't found in boardrooms or stock valuations. It isn't measured by who can destroy a competitor's reputation most effectively. Real strength is vulnerability. It's opening yourself to love despite the risk of pain. It's choosing truth over convenience." Thorn stepped away from the podium, moving to the front of the stage. "I spent 3 years believing what was said about me. I let those whispers define how I saw myself. I built walls to protect myself from further hurt, never realizing those same walls were keeping out everything that mattered." His voice grew stronger, more passionate. "Then I met a woman who saw past all of that, who taught me that redemption isn't about proving others wrong. It's about finding the courage to believe in yourself again." He extended his hand towards Zafina, who rose and walked to join him on stage. As she took his hand, a palpable warmth spread through the room. "This is my fiancée, Zafina Avery, the woman who showed me that whispers have power only if you choose to listen to them." Zafina smiled through her tears as he drew her close. "Tonight, I'm announcing the formation of the Zara Westbrook Foundation, dedicated to supporting families facing fertility challenges and premature births. My daughter's difficult entry into this world has opened my eyes to struggles far more significant than business competition or social standing." He turned to address the room directly. "The Foundation's first initiative will be building a state-of-the-art NICU wing at Manhattan General Hospital, where families can stay with their premature infants throughout their hospitalization." Applause broke out, tentative at first, then building to enthusiastic approval as Thorn continued outlining the Foundation's ambitious plans. For those of you who participated in spreading rumors about me, whether maliciously or carelessly, I don't seek apologies or retribution. Instead, I invite you to channel that energy into something truly constructive. The Foundation welcomes your support, your expertise, and yes, he smiled slightly, your money. Laughter rippled through the crowd, breaking the last of the tension. 3 years ago, I let whispers convince me I was somehow less of a man because I couldn't father a child. Today, I stand before you as a father who understands that manhood has nothing to do with fertility and everything to do with how you treat those entrusted to your care. As Thorn finished his speech, the room erupted in a standing ovation. Zafina squeezed his hand, pride shining in her eyes. Even those who had been the most persistent sources of whispers applauded, perhaps out of genuine admiration, perhaps out of social necessity. The reception afterward was a blur of congratulations and pledges of support for the new foundation. Several couples approached privately to share their own fertility struggles, thanking Thorn for bringing the topic into the open. When they finally left the event, exhaustion was evident in Zafina's face, though her eyes still shone with joy. "Straight to the hospital?" Thorn asked as they settled into the back of his car. "Please," she replied, "I need to see her." In the quiet sanctuary of the NICU, they stood together beside their daughter's incubator. Zara had already grown noticeably, her tiny face more defined, her movements more coordinated. When the nurse placed her in Zafina's arms for their nightly kangaroo care session, she immediately nestled against her mother's chest. "She knows you," Thorn murmured, watching in awe as their daughter's tiny hand wrapped around Zafina's finger. "And she knows you," Zafina replied, nodding toward the monitor that showed Zara's heart rate, slowing to a peaceful rhythm at the sound of Thorn's voice. As Thorn gazed at his family, this miracle he had never dared to hope for, he felt the last echoes of those cruel whispers finally fade away, replaced by a profound peace. "Your speech was beautiful," Zafina said softly. "You didn't attack anyone, even those who deserved it." "Revenge wouldn't have brought healing," he replied, gently stroking Zara's impossibly small back. "Only love can do that." Later that night, as Zafina slept in their bed and Zara rested in her NICU incubator across town, Thorn stood at the windows of their penthouse, watching the city lights twinkle against the darkness. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Westbrook reborn, tech CEO's journey from whispered scandal to family man. He smiled and set the phone aside without reading further. Let them write what they would. The whispers no longer had power over him. 3 years of living under the weight of rumors had nearly broken him, but now those same whispers had led him, however painfully, to this moment, to Zafina, to Zara, to a fuller understanding of what truly mattered. Sometimes, he reflected, redemption came not from silencing the whispers, but from finding a truth so powerful that they simply couldn't be heard anymore. And as the city slept below, Thorn Westbrook, no longer defined by whispers, but by the love that had redeemed him, finally felt complete.